Good evening and welcome back to our Poe discussion. And I am Carmen Bolden,
And I'm Jeannie Smith,
and
and we
we
are
are the
the
Poe-tastic
Poetastic
2.
Crew. All right,
And
Carmen, get with the program. All right.
I know when we're not in the same room, we kind of don't time that well, but it's always funny. So,
The
but
audio
we
link.
have, yes, and we have a very special guest tonight, Alex Zavistovich. I got it the second time. Okay. So, Alex, welcome to our interview show episodes. And we just would love to hear a little bit about you before we kind of get to asking some questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Alex Zavistovich. I'm the founder and artistic director of the National Edgar Allan Poe Theater. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're the only theater in the entire world, actually, that is dedicated to adapting the works of Edgar Allan Poe for the stage, for broadcast, and in schools for education and literacy.
Oh, that is awesome.
Good.
That is really
And where are
awesome.
you based out of?
We're
Just so
based
everyone knows.
we're based in Poe's resting place, Baltimore, Maryland.
Nice.
Awesome. Awesome. And I think from the website, it looked like that are you guys trying to get a permanent like location for performances?
We are actually, excuse me, we got our start in 2019, and so right before things got super crazy with the pandemic, and we realized early on that there's a shortage of performance space for creative folks in Baltimore. I guess it's a good problem to have more
Yeah.
creative folks than there is space. Um, but it has always been our ambition to be at a tourism focused organization.
Okay.
So having a fixed location is absolutely part of the plan. In the near term, we've kind of sidestepped that problem by focusing more on our broadcast and radio drama component. So we've over the past several years have been doing radio drama adaptations of the works of Edgar Allan Poe that are available on National Public Radio and Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, every place you can imagine. So yeah, that's the long-term plan, and we're at the process right now of building out our board to help us do exactly that: identify a fixed location and help with raising money to make it a reality.
Oh, that is great. That is really great. I I come up to the Poe Fest every year. We're going to get Jeannie there next year. That's our goal. And because I know she would love to be there with all of the Poe things. And so
Yeah.
once you guys do have a permanent location, I cannot wait to go and attend.
That's great. Yeah, we did our first live show last year about this time. Sort of the near suburbs of Baltimore. It was a great look. It was a great venue, but we really want to be closer into the city itself, preferably somewhere near the Poe House. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean that's we will gladly accept any location,
Yes.
but the closer we are to the Poe House, I think the better it would be for everyone concerned.
Absolutely. Do you get to work with the Poe House a lot or?
We do. I was actually on the board of directors for a number of years, and I maintain a great relationship. One of the things that we did with the Poe House this year was the first effort that we did of doing our Poe in film initiative. So the day before the festival officially launched, we did a screening at the Harbor East Cinemas, which is a gorgeous venue in Baltimore, of the movie The Death of Poe, which deals with the circumstances leading up to Poe's death. And then afterwards, we had a talk back with the film director as well as the president of the Edgar Allan Poe Society of Baltimore, sort of talking about not only the circumstances of Poe's death, but the actual medical conditions. And so that was the first official collaboration that we did with the Poe House, and we're in discussion right now for more of the same, as well as perhaps having them participate in our Doomsday project later on in 2024.
Oh, that's awesome. And my husband and I flew in for Po Fest Friday night, and he really couldn't take off work because I really wanted to attend the movie screening, and I was very disappointed I didn't get to. And so next year, if you guys do that again, we're definitely gonna. I'm just even if I have to fly in by myself or with Jeannie to see it.
We really hope that you'll be able to make it next time. We've actually gotten great response from the filmmaking community. I don't know if you know the folks from Poe Movies, but they're great, and
Yes,
they do
they've been on here. Yes, they're wonderful.
yeah, they do great work. They're fantastic family, and they've already expressed interest in participating on an ongoing basis. So
Oh, great.
we're looking forward to that. Among the other ideas that we have, though, might be kind of late night screenings of. I don't know if you've ever watched any of the Roger Corman Edgar Allan Poe movies with Vincent Price.
Yes,
So
all of them.
yeah, great. Well, we thought that would be a perfect sort of late night idea, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that would be. That kind of reminds me of like the Svengoolie,
Yeah.
and have like a Poe character, a Poe character from his story, or Poe, somebody representing Poe introducing him. That would be really fun.
That's an excellent idea.
Well, you mentioned Doomsday, and so will you tell us about that project? I was able to watch part of it and everything, but it was amazing event, just the little bit I got to see.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Doomsday, we started it. We just finished the second one, second annual one this past May. We started the year before this, excuse me. And it is a 24-hour nonstop marathon reading of the works of Edgar Allan Poe. We usually start on a Saturday, finish on Sunday. The first time we did it was 8 insane people in my basement, each reading an hour straight every 8 hours, and that was fabulously successful. This past May, we expanded it further still, and we worked in collaboration with a local bookstore in Fells Point, Greedy Reads, and had 40 readers from all walks of life and all different professions in the Baltimore community. The director of the Baltimore Museum of Art, the Walters Art Gallery, the Enoch Pratt Public Library, which is Baltimore's public library system, a whole host of other folks, all of them committing a half hour each and going straight through 24 hours. It was live streamed. The coming year, we're going to, in May of 2024, we're going to be looking at expanding it further still. We're in discussion right now with the Enoch Pratt Library. They've been great friends to us, and we're talking about maybe doing it at the library itself, the main branch.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
sort of locking us in the place after everyone else leaves and just reading straight through.
Yes.
It'll be great fun, and for the first time ever, we're going to expand internationally. We've already got a theater group in Milan, Italy, who have agreed to participate, do their own sort of 24-hour reading in Italian. I'm talking, in fact, on Friday to a few folks in England about the possibility of doing it there. And we're in discussion with some of the other cities in the US that have an affiliation with Poe, because my goal ultimately is to make this an international annual event.
Yes.
We're well on our way, and it's great. Last year we did fabulously well as a fundraiser for ourselves. Actually, by the time all was said and done, we raised $20,000 in 24 hours.
That is amazing. That is
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a little exhausting. I mean, I was up that entire time. Somebody has to be, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't dream of asking anybody else to be that stupid. So,
that sounds like something Jeannie and I would do.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to today. We're already planning it, actually. So
that's wonderful.
Look forward to doing it again.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, where did you come up with the name Doomsday?
So I don't know if you're familiar, but the James Joyce's book Ulysses is celebrated every year in June. in an event called Bloomsday, right?
Oh,
And so it's very similar in concept. In fact, it's so similar in concept, I actually stole the idea. But people will read the book, in nonstop readings. I've participated in the past, and I was invited to an event for Bloomsday, and I kind of made me think, well, why are we? It's a great book, but why are we celebrating an inscrutable work of fiction by an Irish author when we have an equally inscrutable writer ourselves right here in Baltimore? So once I thought, all right, we're going to kind of borrow from the Bloomsday concept, then Doomsday just was a natural play on that idea. So yeah, that's it's very interesting because I don't know if you've ever tried to start an annual tradition internationally, but it's kind
Yeah.
of it's surprisingly not an easy thing to do.
yeah.
I can only imagine. We this year we started it's called Poet Like Poe poetry contest. We started it kind of mid-April. We got a little bit sort of late basically. Next year we're going to do do it the whole month of April for National Poetry Month, and
Nice.
had some great entrants submit their poems and things. And so we hope we can get more, and we're trying to also kind of reach the youth. But to launch it the Saturday before April 1st, we're going to do a live poetry reading for several hours. We haven't decided yet how long, but we're going to invite people to come online and do the poetry reading. So I was going to say, we would love to have you join us.
Oh, we'd be honored actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was great. The idea was so well received that we ended up on the front page of the Baltimore Sun the day that the event began, and we were on television. I mean, it's just weird enough that it's perfect for Baltimore. Yeah,
Yes.
Baltimore is a quirky place, and so
Yes.
they embrace the weirdness, right? And yeah, it's we're looking forward to doing it again. I'm looking forward to your event, and maybe if you have the opportunity next May, you can come up and do a little reading with us.
Oh, that would be amazing. I know I would love it, and we'll get Jeanie to come too.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I also would like to know during the whole Doomsday when you're doing the readings, I'm assuming you're not only broadcasting it, but you're also doing it live in front of other people.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
During the day,
Hmm.
this past May, for example, we started at noon outside the Greedy Reads bookstore, and
Yeah.
anyone was invited to come by and watch and listen. Then after the bookstore closed, we took it all inside, and for that overnight period, we did it basically in a locked space because
Okay.
we didn't want people coming and going all hours in
Yeah,
somebody else's space, and
absolutely.
and so I think we're going to be doing the same if we're lucky enough to do it in a large venue like the Pratt Library, knock wood, then we'll probably do the same, because once it's the overnight hours, you don't want people, just sort of
Right.
coming into the library, for
Yeah.
example.
Oh my
Yeah. Well, I
goodness.
was just thinking that if you were doing it in front of an audience, that would you guys dress in period dress for whatever you would, as make it like a more of a performance type in the period performance area, or just kind of just normal sitting around having kind of like back in the 60s and 70s when you just have poetry readings kind of thing. So
It's
I was just
Yeah,
thinking of that.
it's more of the latter, because I mean, believe me, I was up for 36 hours straight this past May.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
I'm not going to be wearing a costume for 36
Oh
hours.
no.
You know, I was happy to be wearing a sweatshirt, and
Yes.
comfortable
Comfortable pants,
shoes.
just
Right,
forget it.
exactly. Although we did, surprisingly, some of the people who wandered by for the reading during the day were absolutely wearing outfits, and we were just very grateful that so many folks from the community actually came to read, including even political leaders, council members, things
Oh,
of that
nice.
nature. Yeah, it was terrific.
That is awesome. That is really wonderful.
Yeah. All right, Carmen, what's the next question?
All
I'll let
right.
you ask now.
Okay. So, you obviously probably have a background in theater. So we were kind of curious, like what all kinds of theater that you've done.
Well, I am a theater and television and movie actor. I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild.
Okay.
Not a member of Actors Equity, although I've been eligible on points for years. It's just so happens that I wouldn't be able to afford myself in my own productions if I became union. But I'm a classically trained actor. I've done Shakespeare in the park. I've had my own theater companies. The one that predated the National Edgar Allan Poe Theater was a group called Molotov Theater Group, which
Hmm.
preserved sort of a very old, almost forgotten style of French horror theater.
Oh.
Uh, and we've actually been in textbooks. It's I've done a lot of weird, interesting things, and so
Mhm.
when I as I decided that I wanted to do more sort of production and have my own theater, I've always been interested in horror. I started this horror theater in DC, and then when I moved to Baltimore, it just made it a perfect sense to just focus a little bit more on the horror and supernatural work of Edgar Allan Poe, and,
Mhm.
and the comedy as well. I mean, he did write some interesting comedic
Yeah,
pieces. So
absolutely. Yeah.
so that's my background. I've been on in television and films and on stage for, oh gosh, longer than I can count actually. Um, yeah, so that's my background, and not really having I don't really have all that much time to do anything other than our own stuff any longer, you know. So it's running a project like this takes a ton of time, and I just can't devote as much time to being on stage anymore as I'd like.
Okay. And I think because your group performed at the Poe Fest a couple of years ago, I believe, because I think my husband and I got to see you guys perform.
Yeah, we did a live reading of some of our previous radio dramas. We have
Okay.
a project called Poe Theater on the Air,
Hmm.
which, as I mentioned earlier, we are doing in collaboration with National Public Radio. If you
Hmm.
Google, you can find the episodes on our website, but you can also Google Poe and National Public Radio, and it takes you, we're the first search result, Poe Theater on the Air, and that'll take you to a selection of 20 separate episodes of the work that we did over about a year and a half span, and then we took a brief hiatus, and we're just starting again with our second season, which is radio drama adaptations of Poe's detective stories, the character that he invented, Auguste Dupin.
Hmm.
So we just concluded recording in post production now of the first story, Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Hmm.
Then we'll be doing The Mystery of Marie Roget and wrapping it up with The Purloined Letter.
Nice. Okay. I knew I have listened to several of the episodes a little while back, and I want to get back to listening to them again. One of the things I do, I have a little bit of a drive to back and forth to school, and so I like to listen to these type of things, books, and so I'm planning on listening to these on my way to school and on my way home. So I listen to a lot of Poe
I
in the
can
car.
imagine. I'd be very interested in getting your reaction. I mean,
Yeah.
we've won a number of awards. We're archived in the Library of Congress. We're going to be part of the special collection of the Enoch Pratt Library in Baltimore. But a lot of times, I kind of do this in a vacuum, and I don't get a ton of feedback because there's no such thing as reviews of radio dramas,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely interested in people's feedback because that's how you get better, right?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And even like for our podcast, we do get a few reviews here and there, but to me, not enough. It's like give us feedback and tell us what you like, what you don't like, and we want to make it as best as we can.
Yeah, exactly.
Constructive criticism. Constructive.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
constructive criticism. I mean, everybody armchair quarterbacks, and I'm not as interested in hearing people say, "Well, I would do it this way."
Right.
I'm more interested in hearing like what worked and what didn't work and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's been a kind of a passion project. It was unbelievably tricky to do during the pandemic because
Oh, I bet.
we didn't even have access to a an actual studio to do the recording. So we did most of it in my bedroom closet because
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I, I live in the city and there's a lot of street noise, so the quietest place in my house is my bedroom closet. So, and I only had one microphone, right? So if did some pieces with excuse me, with my girlfriend, for example, who's been in a number of them,
Yeah.
um, she'd be sitting in the closet with the headphones on, and I'd have to yell her cue lines, and then she'd record that. And then after that was all done, I'd have to go in and re-record everything that I had yelled and just replace it with my voice. It
Oh,
was
that would make an interesting episode right there, yelling off from one side to the other. But I was talking to Carmen before we got on here that I was, clicking on and listening to Morella
oh
because
good.
it's been a while since I've read it, and I was just going to reorient myself because I wanted to hear what you guys do, like you were saying with Morella. But the one thing is, the moment I heard it begin, it threw me right into 40s radio. It
Yay.
was like listening to the radio dramas with the special effects, with the footsteps in the background, just having that ambiance. Because one of the things on Sirius XM, one of my best friends, we love to listen to the radio theater, like Johnny Dollar and the Whistler and all those. So it definitely gave me that vibe.
I'm
The
glad to hear that.
Yeah, the one thing I do want was interested in is, do you have to listen to them in order? Because it started out talking about the black cat and all that, and then I was like, did I click on the wrong one or
Well, we set it up kind of like a television series in that
okay.
you can listen to each episode by itself, but uh, in the intros, for those people who are listening in order, we would
Mhm.
kind of shout back to the previous episode. So
Right.
if you were going to be listening to, as you did, if you were going to be listening to Morella, then the first couple of minutes of intro, you'd hear a snippet of the show preceding it.
Okay.
Right.
And that was because while each one stands on its own as an episode, if you listen to them all in order, by the time you get to the end of the season, everything kind of ties together. And so our final episode was fascinating because it was an adaptation of a French adaptation of the Poe story, The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. So
Okay.
we translated that stage play into English and then adapted it for a radio drama. But it ties everything together. So by the time you listen to that last episode, you kind of get where the entire thing was going over all of the episodes, and it sets up for the next season, which we've just begun recording.
Oh, very cool.
But you can listen to any of them individually. You just have to get
Mhm.
past the first episode, or past the intro. And we do have a repeating host. You mentioned Sven Gulli, so we have this character named Dr. Mallard, who runs this hospital for troubled souls. And so that's the concept. Is every episode he takes you to a different room where one of his patients tells their story, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so that's the way we framed the entire thing. You can listen to them any way you care to.
Mhm.
Yeah, but if you do listen to them in order, you get kind of the cherry on top of understanding where we were going all along.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good to know. So that way I'll definitely go back and I'll start at the first one. So I
Mhm.
definitely can get that overall connection straight through because, I was kind of wondering who Dr. Millard was because I was like, did I miss that from? I don't remember him in the Black Cat.
Right,
So,
exactly.
so that kind of threw me off before I started, paying true attention, going, okay, this must be a part of the intro and not the actual story.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
but
It's
other
just
than
a sign
that,
yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, other than that, it was very much you were like being sucked in right into the story, which is
Yeah.
what I like. I don't like the long drawn out, the suspense is good if as long as you're not, making me wait too long. It's kind of like, I want instant gratification right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm glad to hear that. Well, we purposely kept the episodes shorter on the short side as well. So I think the shortest one is about 19 minutes. The longest one is about 28. But we kept them at that length just to maintain people's attention. And also because it's just exhausting to try and do anything longer, frankly. And
Oh yeah.
it's just a lot of work to do the sound design, both the special effect or both the sound effects as well as the actual musical underscore. That
Mm-hmm.
that can take a long time, but the results are I mean, somewhat immodestly, I will say, I think the results are great. We've won a number of awards, and we also, on the strength of those shows, we were invited to participate in an international project. There are a couple of universities in the UK, the University of Stirling and the University of East Anglia, who
Mm-hmm.
worked together on a project called the Media of Mediumship, which was an exploration of the occult in England, and they wrote a 3-part radio drama series, and they invited us to both act in it. I acted in it and did the production and sound effects. Excuse me, and it was aired on the BBC.
Oh,
So
nice.
uh,
Okay.
radio drama actually is still very much alive and well in the UK. Um,
Mhm.
much more so than in the US, which is weird because I mean, arguably this is where it started, but who
Yeah.
knows? Who can explain
Yeah.
it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just
And
happy that people listen.
yeah, and it would be interesting to know, is it like the older generation, or are some of the younger generation finding it and kind of getting hooked into it? It'd be really interesting to know the demographics of who really enjoys listening to it.
Yeah, I would be equally interested. I think some of the earlier information that we got from the public radio station in Baltimore, WYPR, which streams our episodes, kind of suggested it was all over the map,
Okay.
but in general, the people who listen to National Public Radio skew a little bit older, as far as demographics are concerned. So, but yeah, it would be very interesting to find out, who's actually listening to some of the other podcast platforms that carry our material.
Absolutely. Yes, because we look at our analytics once a month, and sometimes it changes. And I've noticed that there's a trend for our podcast that's kind of moving down to a younger audience, but still in that kind of mid-range to like 50 to 65, and like I think it's like 30 or 30 to 45 or something like that. It's like our biggest age group, but we're actually moving into some of the younger ones. And I was kind of surprised. So, which
Yeah.
makes me happy that the younger generation is embracing Poe.
Well, I mean, it's still he's still taught. I mean, the Raven is
Mhm,
taught in 8th grade English,
mhm,
eighth
mhm,
grade, which I think. I mean, I was probably in that 8th grade, maybe even younger when I was first introduced to Poe. But
mhm.
I mean, education and literacy has always been very important for me in the work that I do in theater in general. So we actually have an educational curriculum that we've drafted based around our radio dramas as support material. But if you visit our website, you'll see lots of curricula and other resources for teachers, including an MP3 download of The Mask of the Red Death, which I recited. So
Yes, we did see that, and I think, like telling you, I'm currently teach, and Jeannie is a retired teacher, and I did not tell you I'm actually an English teacher, and so I
oh,
teach freshman English, And in our curriculum here in Tennessee, we teach Annabelle Lee paired with, it's a star-crossed love unit with Romeo and Juliet, Annabelle Lee. And so I always love to find resources to add to what I'm teaching. And the kids love Poe, even at 14, 15 years old, whenever I bring him up. And so I've added in some more poems to kind of, just it lets me teach more of Poe and talk about Poe, but they love it. They're like, give us more, give us more.
Fantastic. For our purposes, I think kind of the more plain language approach that we've taken with the radio dramas, it makes it easier for people to listen to, but it also
Yes.
makes it easier to explore and understand some of his denser prose.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, you and I both, we all know that some of his language makes Shakespeare seem like a walk in the park,
Yes.
so dense. So that's why we've done, for example, we did a plain language radio drama adaptation of The Raven, which we found has been very helpful for students because it is an action for action retelling of the poem in plain language. So, so people get an idea of what it's really about, without having to kind of parse some of the denser text.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will definitely check that out. Even though we don't teach the Raven in ninth grade, it's always nice to give the kids those options because they always bring up the Raven, they bring up other things. And with the Netflix series Fall of the House of Usher being so popular, they know I love Poe, and so they're all coming in. Have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet? And Jeannie and I are actually going to watch it, part of it together this weekend, because we want to dissect it and really focus on it. And so
I'd be really interested in getting your opinion about it too, because when I mean, I had to kind of force myself to watch the first couple of episodes.
Okay.
Because I think, because I was expecting a modern take on the story, but it's not that at all. And at first I was watching this is like, well, this is kind of like Succession with ghosts or something. That was my take. And it took me a couple of episodes to sort of get into it. Frankly, I enjoyed it more just as a thing in itself rather than a Poe thing.
Okay.
But it pays off by the end. I have to say that the final episode was really, really excellent.
Okay.
But the first one, I'm like, yeah, this is, I mean, I've already seen Succession,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about the plain language of the poems and stuff to get the younger generation to understand it and get involved with it. And it's so difficult. Before I had to retire, it was so difficult to find it done correctly because most of the time the kids would just like throw it into like an online modern, translation type of thing. And sometimes it was like that doesn't do it justice, and it kind of ruins it for you. And plus it doesn't help your vocabulary when you're understanding it if it's not done correctly. So
Right.
it's always good to know when you have someone um like you and your group and everything that are putting the time into it to do it correctly, and so you can share it out and they can understand it without losing it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I agree completely. And you kind of, I mean, I'm glad that we have such talented actors working with us, because dramaturgy is part of the classical acting process, of course. So we really work hard to make sure we understand what every line means and what every word means. And it unlocks so much. I mean, there's humor in The Raven, and I think it's lost on people who think that, well, first they think all that Edgar Allan Poe ever did was, horror. But secondly, they kind of feel like, well, this is all about, I mean, it flirts with mental problems and things like that. So they think it has to be, kind of like this crazy manic thing, which it could be. But when you read some of the lines, you know, and the Raven makes his first entrance and says, you know, um, tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. You know, I mean, asking this Raven who kind of struts in like he owns the place, you know, what his name is. You know, I mean, that's as funny as Poe gets, you know, but it's
Yeah.
genuine. It's genuine humor, and that's the important thing. You need the contrast, right? If it's all
Yes.
just relentlessly beating you over the head with this, you know, this bummer experience after another, you kind of lose the magic of it. You have to
Yeah.
have a comparison. You have to have, it's like Arlo Guthrie said, you can't have a light without a dark to stick it in, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, and it's just like the Abbott and Costello. You cannot appreciate and understand who's on first if you don't have an understanding of what it means, and to listen and to get the actual humor that's beside it, other than just the frustration of, sometimes we've had those conversations with people where we just keep going round and round and round, but
Hmm.
you're missing the whole ambiance of what they're doing and the
Yeah.
humor in it. And
Uh,
like you said, that's in Poe. You miss the satire, you miss the sarcasm, you miss that humor that he embeds into it if you don't understand or pay attention. So,
right,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because that one of the big reasons, besides just we love Poe and all of his works and everything that he did, that we started the podcast, was because, with the 6 degrees, it's all different facets of what Poe wrote, and like kind of sharing it with people to get more people to understand Poe is more of a Renaissance man, American Renaissance, than people realize. And it's like he's got so many levels of the depth of, knowledge. And it's like people need to be aware of that, how brilliant he was.
Remarkable, really. And you know, to think that he accomplished so much by the time he was 40 years old. But
Yeah.
you're right, this Renaissance quality, you know, he was a poet. He wrote short stories, he wrote novels, he wrote a really awful play.
Yes.
He wrote a book of he wrote a book of kind of a philosophical treatise on why we're all here called Eureka.
Yes.
Surprisingly, you guys probably know, but when I was first really getting deeply into Poe, I was surprised to learn that his most successful work during the time that he was alive was actually a nonfiction book about seashells.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Right?
have I purchased it, but I haven't read it yet. I'm going to. I've read Eureka, but the seashells book, I actually love seashells, but I know it's going to be very technical, so I've got to be in the right mindset for it.
Yeah, exactly. I can't, I don't really know when I'm going to be ready for that either.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
Oh my
And the sad
goodness.
part is that just bespokes that time period of what
Yes.
was acceptable and what was made more important, scientific, because that was during the Second Great Awakening and the Reformation times. And, that's where you had religion and science coming together with the whole Sir Isaac Newton. And, you had Charles Darwin, and his time was coming up because he and Poe were the same age. So it was kind of happening at the same time. So it's kind of interesting. Why would anyone want to buy a book about seashells?
Yeah.
Really?
oh yeah, I mean, he gambled on himself a lot.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I think Eureka, he took to the publisher and said, "Oh, this is going to be my legacy," and he wanted to have, you know, I don't know how many thousands of copies printed, and they decided to have a run of 500, and they weren't even able to sell all of those. So
Wow.
his life was really fraught with these kind of um, I mean, he would have been he in his time he was viewed as kind of not living up to his potential, I suppose, you know.
Yeah.
But his legacy is just so tremendous that it transcends all different interests, you know. I mean, you know, the interest that folks have today, even in music, the interest that they have in Poe is surprising. I mean, heck, his
Hmm.
his his image is on the cover of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Oh, I know. I
You know?
know.
Yeah. I mean, the Alan Parsons Project wrote an entire CD of tales of mystery and imagination. You know, so he just sort of transcends a lot of different artistic interests and creative interests, and
Absolutely.
he's a fascinating man.
I mean,
Definitely.
how many musicians have actually made a song about one of his, works? Like Annabelle Lee, wasn't that Stevie Nicks did
Yes.
Annabelle Lee? Yes.
Yeah, it's a really good version too that she
Yeah.
did.
No.
And even the Beatles, what is Diamonds in the Sky has some reference, or allusion to some of Poe's works.
I mean,
So
he's very influential for a lot of folks, and for a variety of different reasons, you know. And it's just his ability to kind of plumb the depths of what really makes us afraid, but also kind of dealing with more everyday issues. Like the Bells is a great example, right? You know,
Yeah.
the cycle of all of that, you know, from love to marriage to old age to death, and just the cyclical nature of it.
Wow.
You know, I mean, the guy knew what he was doing.
Definitely. Definitely.
and he did it
Um,
well.
yes. And Alex, you had mentioned that it's probably about eighth grade that you first kind of read Poe. And so what really got you hooked on Poe, I guess would be the question to ask. We always ask everybody this question.
Right. Well, I was in, heck, I must have been in maybe seventh grade or something. And I was cast in a school production of The Telltale Heart.
Oh,
And I
nice.
played the murderer in seventh grade, right? And so part of it was just me being a prima donna. It's like, heck, I am the lead character on this. So I immediately thought Poe is definitely cool.
Yeah.
But as I got older and started reading more of his material, and was made to read some of it in class, I mean, there's something about it that just resonated with me. I've as a result, probably, of that influence, I've always been interested in the horror genre. That took me into some really interesting places in my acting career. Um, and yeah, it was probably, that was the seminal moment, I think, was being on stage, you know, as a kid, and bringing those words to life. I'm sure I was terrible. I had to have been terrible. I was in seventh grade, you know, but it
You
was still
never know. You never know.
right. But it was definitely, that was definitely the seminal influence for me.
Okay.
Everybody's got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, as a
Absolutely.
result, I kind of had an unblemished career of only playing villains and madmen, and you know.
Well, it's worked for many, many actors over the years.
That's true.
Yeah, I think it's the creepy eyebrows. I think that's a big part of it.
Nothing wrong with that. Everybody's
Well,
got to have their
and
creepiness.
you're very tall too. You're very tall.
I am, but I'm getting shorter now that I'm older. I was 6'3", um, my entire adult life, and then a couple of years ago, I had a physical, and they're like, "Yeah, well, you're 6'2", and I'm like, "No, no, 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 I'm 6'3", and they're like, "Well, let's measure you again."
Oh
And then I
gosh.
definitely, somewhere along the line, my cartilage in my spine just said, "You know what? The heck with this. We give."
Uh-oh.
And so yeah, so I'm now an inch shorter than I was.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You're old, you're older, and you're more compressed. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everything.
I'm only 5'4", and I hope I don't shrink, but I
Yeah,
can see it happening.
yeah.
Well, the other question we always like to ask is, what is your favorite Poe story or poem?
The Facts in the Case of Monsieur Valdemar, without,
Okay.
Ooh.
yeah.
It's a good one. It is a
It is
good
a
one.
really good one, you know, and it was itself, I think, quite influential. I don't know how much you've read of H.P. Lovecraft. A lot, I'm sure, but he wrote a story called Cool Air, And when you read Cool Air, there's no way that he wasn't influenced by the facts in the case of Monsieur Valdemar. And just the story itself, kind of the story of the story itself, is fascinating, because when it first came out, you know, it was written as kind of a narrative account, and people thought it was real. And so it was one of the first literary hoaxes. Poe never set out to make it a hoax, but he didn't do anything to correct people's misapprehension of it. But it was one of those things where, you know, at the time, mesmerism, hypnosis was really popular. And I think that's one of the things that makes Poe so interesting, is that he would look at what was popular at the time and then just sort of extrapolate to its nth degree of like, what can we do to really test out how creepy we can make this, right? So the idea of what would happen if you were able to hypnotize someone at the very moment that they die, you know, what would happen, right? I mean, that stuff is fascinating. And that was the first radio drama, I think, that won an award for us. We won an award of excellence from the Here Now Festival about it. I wrote the adaptation of it. I was very happy with the way it turned out. So if you have a chance to listen to it, I hope it raises some goosebumps for you.
Oh, I bet it will. Yeah, because I really think there's so many stories that get overlooked just because of the popularity of The Raven, The Telltale Heart, which are some of my favorites. But the case of M. Valdemar is very good, and it gets very overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. It posed some challenges for adaptation as a radio drama, because there were a lot of incidental characters in the story, you know, whole teams of nurses and a bunch of doctors, and like, well, I can't have a cast of 15 or 20 people, you know, it's just not. So you have to figure out how to adapt the story to the bare number of characters that are required to still make it authentic. But we were pretty happy with it, and that also marked sort of a turning point for when our production, which has always been great, but it got really theatrical, and we really started to embrace that theater of the mind aspect that people talk about when they listen to radio dramas, because you're trying to fill in for an entire sense that's just not there, you know. But I do think that that's one of the things that's really interesting about radio dramas. In fact, and it harkens back to some of the educational work that we did. Before the Poe Theater became the Poe Theater, I had another project that did radio drama adaptations of the works of William Shakespeare. And we worked with the Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind in Washington, D.C. They had a summer camp for their youngsters. And we gave small scripts, at very tiny snippets of scripts in Braille to these youngsters, and taught them how to do sound effects, you know. And then by the time the session was over, they all got a copy of themselves doing the work. And what I loved about that was not only did they learn something, but it broadened their horizons, because if you have a visual impairment, radio drama is not an obstacle for you. You can be a race car driver, you can be a surgeon, you can do so many other things in radio drama, and your eyesight does not matter at all. Yeah. So having that kind of liberating element, especially for young people, was I mean, it was very I'm not a big old softy, but it was very heartwarming at the end. I'm like, yeah, these kids really are digging this, because they've never been in never had the opportunity of playing a sighted person. So down the road, we hope that we're going to be able to embrace, some of those channels as well when we do education. So it's not just what we do in schools, but what we do for sort of disenfranchised communities to give them an appreciation not only of a particular art form, but the work itself.
That is amazing. Oh, that warms my heart.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it kind of made me choke up a little bit, and I'm not. For a guy who only plays villains and murderers and nut jobs, yes, yeah, I definitely was like, this is nice.
Oh yeah, and I know I like Jeannie and I both, of course, we always will have a kid or two that, maybe even a few more some years that'll just really, wrench your nerves, but you know, we for us being educators, it's like we're all about the kids. We want the best for the kids. And it's like, what can you give them to get a really good educational experience that really broadens their imagination? Because with all the technology nowadays, they don't imagine like they used to. And like what you were saying with those experiences with the sound effects and things, that is so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I do hope that this coming year we'll be able to broaden our output in education because
Mhm.
I mean, we're right. It just feels like we're so close to this just blowing, really getting big. But
Mhm.
the next couple of months is going to be pivotal as we try and build out the board and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So I would encourage anyone, if I haven't turned anyone off, if you want to work with us, please do contact me because it would be
Yeah.
wonderful to have folks kind of who share the vision help us get to the next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Well, Jeannie, do you have any more questions that you can think of?
No, I think that kind of covered everything I was curious about and even more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we always have pre-planned questions, but then we sometimes, there are always things that come up that, we talk about even more in depth, or
Mm.
you bring up things. Anything else you would like to add, Alex?
Well, again, I would encourage everyone who hasn't heard what we've done yet to either go to our website and click through on the Poe Theater on the Air page. That'll take you
Mhm.
to the National Public Radio site, or you can just Google Poe and NPR. Uh, in the next few weeks, we should be able to announce a big initiative with how we're going to get our programming on the air. And yeah, in the meantime, one other thing that I'm working on, which should be a lot of fun for next year, is I'm working on a theatrical seance.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, Baltimore is a fun. We've already covered the fact that it's quirky and weird, right? So,
Yes. In
uh,
a good way. In a good way.
in the best way,
Yes, yes.
absolutely. Well, it not only has a huge magic community, three
Mhm.
different theaters that focus exclusively on magic. It also is arguably the headquarters for what they call bizarre magic, which is sort of
Okay.
spooky stories punctuated with magic tricks kind of stuff.
Neat.
So there are tons of folks who do different kinds of seance work here in Baltimore, and I've already done some theatrical seances in the past surrounding the death of Edgar Allan Poe, but
Mhm.
the one that I'm working on right now, which is going to be called Poe's Lover, has to do with Sarah Helen Whitman, who was
Oh, okay.
Poe's last fiance,
Mhm.
who after Poe's death actually became a psychic medium herself. And this is absolute fact. I'm not fabricating an ounce of this,
Mhm.
but she began dressing all in black and wore a coffin-shaped pendant around her neck, and on Sundays would have seances to try and invoke the spirits of the dead, including Poe himself. And so I've created a very intimate, probably no more than a dozen people at a time, theatrical experience to try and raise the spirit of Sarah Helen Whitman. So
Oh,
that
wow.
I'm busy memorizing that right now. In fact, after we're
Okay.
done here, I'm probably going to go back and slave over the script again a little bit.
Oh,
Nice. Oh, that sounds exciting.
I would be there for it. Trust me.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
well,
I
again,
love seances.
I'm very anxious to get people's opinions. It was one of the things that during the International Edgar Allan Poe Festival this year, just to get people to come through the booth, I was doing a lot of bizarre magic stuff. So I was doing metal bending and reading people's minds, and trying to,
Mhm.
you know, because like I said, it's something that if you can't live in Baltimore for more than a couple of years without picking some of this stuff up. Actually,
Yeah.
it's just that kind of thing. But I probably read oh gosh, like 100 lines, and I bent so many spoons. I bent so many damn spoons, but
Wore your brain out right there.
yeah, it was exhausting.
Oh, wow.
When we get a chance to see each other in person, I'll do that for you.
Yeah, that
Awesome.
would be awesome. That would be so awesome. Well, Alex, we have so much enjoyed having you on here
Mhm.
and talking about everything you guys are doing. And I can't wait to go back and listen to more of the productions. And it'll fill my morning and afternoons like great.
It was great fun, and yeah, please, when you have a chance, do let me know what you think, and
Absolutely.
let's,
Yeah.
let's stay in touch. Maybe we can do something collaborative. That would be great.
We would love that. Absolutely
I'm
love
there.
that.
Yay.
Well,
All over
so
it.
yes, and so for this episode, Jeanie,
We
we
are
are
Ho
Ho
out.
out.